In different dreams of both Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel, they saw visions telling the same prophecy for the same fourth kingdom to come, after the kingdom of Greece. Nebuchadnezzar saw a fourth kingdom in his vision of a statue of a man with its legs of iron, and it was strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, this fourth kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. And Daniel saw a prophecy of the same fourth kingdom, and he was given much more of the prophecy than Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. Daniel saw this fourth kingdom dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth, it was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. We must remember that horn or horns mean king or kingdoms. Daniel was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. He watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking, he watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So the bronze kingdom of Greece that was in power, was now rapidly declining, and a new power is rising. A fourth kingdom with legs of iron, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong as iron, is coming into power. This kingdom after the Greece kingdom will be so different from all the others, that Daniel wished to know the truth about it. This kingdom was exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze. It consumed personalities of the bronze kingdom of Greece, it conquered, it devoured, it broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 kingdoms which were on its head, and the other king, which came up before which 3 kings fell, namely that king which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows, Daniel watched as this king was making war against them, until God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Ancient of Days, came. And judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Gabriel explained this horrible kingdom to Daniel that was to come into power. It was the fourth kingdom, a beast kingdom on earth, the kingdom of Rome, which will be different from all other kingdoms before it, and it will devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. Gabriel showed Daniel a vision of a period from the beginning of Rome in 753 BC, to the beginning of the Roman Empire in 27 BC, to its union with church and state established in 313 to 476 AD, until Mystery Babylon will be destroyed in the end time. For true and righteous are God's judgments, because he will judge the great harlot who corrupted the earth with her fornication, and he will avenge on her the blood of his servants shed by her. The fourth kingdom that was to come that Gabriel showed Daniel is Rome. Rome is the same kingdom that still exists today, that has been transformed into a counterfeit Christian kingdom, and in the latter days, the Lord will destroy this false blasphemous system. This fourth beast is still with us today in our time. He is the Pope of the Latin Roman Catholic Church, the institution of the papacy. It is different from the first ones. Instead of a conquering kingdom, this kingdom usurped Christianity, and became a counterfeit Christian kingdom. This king subdued 3 kings of the 10. He speaks pompous and blasphemous words against the Most High. He persecutes the saints, the Christians of the Most High. He intends to change times and law. And the saints, the Christians, will be given into his hand for a time, times and half a time. Gabriel explained this horrible kingdom of Rome to Daniel that was to come into power, after the kingdom of Greece. It was before Rome was found. A mysterious group of people were migrating to Rome, during the time period when the Greeks were passing through the Dark Age and invading the Mycenaean civilization. At that time, when the Greeks were expanding and colonizing across the Aegean to the borders of the Near Eastern kingdoms, and Greece was emerging into a new society, called the Hellenic era. This mysterious group of people were migrating to the location in the heart of Italy, which is the present-day capital of modern Italy. Italy was a country located 15 miles from where the Tiber River flows into the Mediterranean Sea, and situated on 7 hills. Rome was colonized by three distinct classes of ancient peoples called the Latins, the Sabines, and the Etruscans. In addition, during the expansion of colonization of the Greeks in the 8th century BC, they too migrated to what is southern Italy and Sicily. By the middle of the 6th century BC, Greeks had colonies that spread all over the lower end of the towns of Naples. Naples was the third city and second port of Italy. In Campania, they spread to Syracuse, a port in southeast Sicily, and they spread to Tarentum in South Italy, located 160 miles southeast of Naples. Latium was the ancient territory of central Italy inhabited by the Latins from the 10th century BC, and lasted until it was dominated by the Romans in the 4th century BC. Apennines was a mountain range northwest of Rome, and it was inhabited by the Sabines. And by the 3rd century BC, the Sabines had become fully Romanized. Etruria was an ancient country of the Italian peninsula in central Italy, north of the Tiber and west of the Apennines, inhabited by the Etruscans. During the 8th century BC, the Etruscans spread southward, settled, and established themselves in Italy. The Etruscans established themselves a monarchy, rulers of all the country, and at the height of their power in the 7th century BC, the Etruscans' territory included all of Italy from the Alps to the Tiber River, including the whole of the Po Valley to the north and much of Latium and Campania to the south. Rome was directly located between the Greeks and the Etruscans, being influenced by both, but most influence came from the Etruscans. The Romans had adopted their systematic architecture design of an urban community. The Greeks and the Etruscans were the two advanced civilizations that existed on Rome's 7 hills, in central Italy during the 8th century BC. And during the 8th century BC, communities had existed near the Tiber River in central Italy. Rome was situated in a position that it could control the main line of communications along the western side of Italy. The Etruscan cities stood to the north of Rome, and the Greek cities stood to the south. Under the Greeks and the Etruscans, the Romans were greatly influenced by them, but the Etruscans made Rome a city. Rome acquired some of their features of an organized municipality, and two of its ancient landmarks. The swampy valley between the Capitoline and Palatine ridges, was drained before 500 BC, and converted into a marketplace, or public business used for political meetings, known later in history as the Forum. A temple to the god Jupiter was erected on the Capitoline hill during the 5th century BC, and it stood there until the 3rd century AD. The Etruscans also enclosed the communities on the Palatine and Capitoline hills, with fortifications to which remnants of the walls may still be seen. The ancient structures that have survived until today include the triumphal arches and columns of the emperors, the Pantheon, the temple dedicated to all the gods built in Rome 27 BC, and reconstructed in its present form in 125 AD, and the Colosseum, or amphitheater that begun under Vespasian in 72 AD, and inaugurated in 80 AD by Titus. The Romans used the Colosseum for their everyday entertainment in public sports, gladiator fights, and later in killing Christians by lions. Before the Colosseum fell into ruins, it could hold more than 80,000 spectators. The remains on the Capitoline hill soon became the stronghold of historic Rome. Today, modern Rome lies to the north of the ancient city, with its capital modern-day Italy. There are 5 other hills in Rome, and they are the Aventine Hill, Caelian Hill, Quirinal Hill, Esquiline Hill, and the Viminal Hill. It is not much known about the early history of Rome, except what oral tradition has brought down to us in myth and legend, and what archaeologists have found and revealed to us. Legend is that Romulus and Remus were twin brothers of Rhea Silvia, and sons of March. They were abandoned and put out to die on the Tigris River after they were born, but they were found and nursed by a she-wolf, and they were later raised up by a shepherd who raised them as his own sons. Rome's traditional date of habitation was 753 BC, where the earliest settlements is said to have been on the Palatine Hill, which was the location of Romulus' residence. In the latter half of the 6th century BC, the Etruscans had made themselves the rulers of Rome. Romulus killed his twin brother and became the first king of Rome. In the period of Rome's transformation from villages of huts to real cities, it was the beginning of the Etruscan monarchy. The period of the Etruscan kings conquered Rome to establish themselves a dynasty of Etruscan princes. At the same time that the Palatine Hill was inhabited by Romulus, other settlements gradually spread to the Esquiline and Quirinal hills of Rome. The city of Rome started as a Roman government monarchy ruled by kings for a period of 244 years, from 753 BC to 510 BC. However, during the long history of Rome, it became a republic in 509 BC, and then an empire in 27 BC. During the decline of the Greek city-states, the city-state of Rome unified the Italian peninsula by conquering its hostile neighboring cities of the Etruscans, the Latin towns and villages, the Greek cities of Campania, and the tribal Sabines from the Apennine Hills, to which many had been under Etruscan rule. Later Rome was in control of the entire Mediterranean and much of northern Europe. There were 7 early kings of ancient Rome from 753 to 510 BC. Romulus being the first king from 753 to 715 BC. After Romulus, 6 other princes ruled until the decline of the monarchical form of government, and the 7th king, who ruled in a tyrannical fashion, was overthrown in 510 BC. The following kings that ruled Rome were Numa Pompilius. He was the second to rule from 715 to 672 BC. He was a second king of Rome and traditionally a founder of Roman ceremonial law, who also introduced the many religious customs. The third king to rule was Tullus Hostilius, and he reigned from 673 to 641 BC. He was the third king of Rome and was a warlike king, who fought against the Sabines. Ancus Marcius was the fourth king to reign, and he reigned from 641 to 616 BC. He was forced to engage in wars with aggressive neighboring Latin tribes and with the Etruscans, captured many Latin towns, and placed their inhabitants in Rome. He is believed to have established the class of plebeians from among his Latin prisoners settled on the Aventine Hill. By exploiting the strategic position of the site, he increased trade. He built the first wooden bridge over the Tiber, and he founded a colony of Ostia at the mouth of the Tiber, a port 3 miles from the sea. The port was a Roman town during the 4th century BC to the 3rd century AD. The site had been extensively excavated. Lucius Tarquinius Priscus reigned from 616 to 578 BC. He was the 5th king of Rome who conquered the neighboring peoples through military achievements, and he constructed a public building project in Rome. Servius Tullius reigned from 578 to 534 BC. He was the 6th king of Rome who enlarged the boundaries of the city. During his reign, a military reform was ascribed to him, designated as the Servius Reform of the Constitution. It was during his reign that the plebs were free to acquire property and wealth, but both patricians and plebeians property holders had to serve in the army, and each took a rank accordance with his wealth. This military arrangement, which had begun in this early 5th century BC, paved the way for the great political struggle between two social orders, the Patricians and the Plebeians. Tarquinius Superbus was the 7th and last king who ruled from 534 to 510 BC. Priscus, Tullius, and Superbus were the last Etruscan kings to rule Rome before Superbus, the last king, was overthrown by Lucius Junius Brutus. In 509 BC, Brutus, a Roman statesman, expelled the last king, Tarquinius Superbus, and established the Roman Republic in 510 BC. He became one of its first praetors, a magistrate, ranking below a consul. The names, dates, and events of the kings may seem to belong to the period of Roman history of myth and legends. However, many events correlate with the following history that tells of the existence of an early rule by kings, for example, Roman expansion, struggles between neighboring Greek and Etruscan neighbors, Rome conquered by Etruria, and the formation of the Etruscans dynasty through Etruscan princes. The next 2 centuries, Rome gradually expanded, and the Etruscans were gradually taken over by the Romans. In 270 BC, Rome had domination of all Italy, and became one of the most powerful states of the ancient world. Rome preserved the heritage of Greece and spread it throughout the area that is now Western Europe. Rome was centered directly between the Etruscan and Greek provinces who greatly influenced them, and Rome profited from both advanced civilizations. The monarchy was abolished and replaced by two magistrates, the consuls as head of government. However, the consuls, who were head of government, never really let go the typical way of monarchy. After the expulsion of the Etruscan kings, Rome became a republic, and gradually developed an oligarchy democracy, government in which power is in the hands of a few. In the 6th century BC, the Roman Republic started out as a small city-state, but pursued a movement toward political and legal universalism. That is, Rome did not start off in unity. It was characterized by a long struggle of internal strife between two social groups in the Roman nation. The two social groups were the Patricians, aristocrats or upper-class noble, and the Plebeians, commoners or lower-class small landowners. Adding to Rome's internal struggle among the two social classes, there was also constant warfare against its surrounding neighbors. These surrounding neighbors that was constantly in warfare against Rome were the Etruscans, Latins, Volsci, and Equi of central Italy, that kept the Romans in continued battles for expansion and protection from threats of their neighboring cities. In 509 BC, Rome was established as a republic and governed by elected consuls who had control over the Senate. Roman citizens began to have a voice in the republic's governmental affairs. Instead of kings who once ruled as monarchs, the republic divided sovereignty between two chief magistrates, called consuls, to carry on the functions of the former kings. They were the highest elected political officials of the Roman Republic. Likewise, the office of the consulship was considered the highest level of the sequential order of public offices, through which ambitious politicians sought to ascend. Two consuls were chosen annually by the whole body of citizens to serve for a one-year term. They were different from kings before them because the consuls held office for only 1 year, and after that year in office, they became senators for life, unless expelled by the censors. The limitation of the consuls to function for 1 year prevented the chief magistrate from becoming autocratic. The social class of the patricians exercised supreme civil and military authority in power, who served as supreme judge in all civil and criminal suits, led the army, and represented Rome in foreign affairs. The Senate was a political aristocratic institution that governed in the Republic, and consisted of a council of elders composed of about 300 citizens. The senators were not elected by the Roman citizens, but appointed by the consuls, and later appointed by the censors. The Roman magistrate automatically would have an appointment to the Senate after serving his term in office. These citizens served for life. Senators were in the beginning patricians, but in time plebeians enrolled as members of the Senate. The praetors, in the absence of consuls, exercised extensive authority in the government. A praetor was a judicial officer who had broad authority in cases of justice, and was responsible for the construction of the public games. The aedile was a magistrate who had power to force public order, and was responsible for maintenance of public buildings, streets, markets, and the regulation of public festivals. The tribune was the title of various administrative officers, and the two most important were the tribunes of the plebs, and the military tribunes. In 494 BC, a succession of plebeian soldiers led to the institution of the tribune plebs, who were elected annually to serve as leaders of the plebeians, in the struggles with the patricians to protect the interests and rights of the plebeians from the patricians. They could veto unfavorable acts of patrician magistrates' legislation. Various officers within the Roman army were also known as tribunes. The military tribune was secondary to the higher magistrates, such as the consuls and praetors. The military tribunes controlled portions of the Roman army. The quaestor was the lowest-ranking regular magistrate in the Roman Republic, and one of the two officials serving as public magistrates is responsible for the government funds, or treasury. The equestrians ranked immediately below senators, and was an important human resource, or equity of the Roman Republic. The Patricians or Sabines conquered a Ligurian people who first dwelt in the land way before the Sabines established themselves there. They became true descendants by blood and adoption through members of the original families of Roman citizens. They were privileged noble families organized in clans who held the dominant power in the Republic. Their authority rested on ownership, who alone could hold office, owned most of the land, dominated the government, and controlled the army. Intermarrying with plebs was forbidden. All political and religious offices were reserved to the patrician dominants. The plebeians were without privileges, they were members of the common people, people of the lowest class, and many were very poor. In the beginning of the 5th century BC, during the reign of Servius Tullius, the fifth early king of Rome, the patrician domination of governmental control, led to the discontent of the plebeians, and initiated a long struggle between the two orders. Pressure stemmed from plebeian grievances of enslavement to debt, discrimination in court proceedings, and prevention of intermarriage with patricians, lack of political representation, and the absence of a written code of laws. The inferior status of the patricians inflamed the plebeians to pursue economic relief, and in the 4th century BC, the plebeians organized and waged a fight for political, legal, and social equality. The plebeians threatened to stop paying taxes, working, or serving in the army, to which the Romans desperately needed for all the warfare going on in the process of expansion. Therefore, the plebeians slowly gained legal equality. The Roman constitution came from conflict between the plebeians and patricians. The Roman constitution dominated government. The Roman constitution stemmed from grievances brought on a Roman constitution known as the struggle of orders. The code of law was drawn up in 451 BC, by the decemvir. The appointment of the decemvirate, a commission of 10 men, in 451 BC, resulted the drawing up of a famous code of laws called Law of the 12 Tables. In 445 BC, the plebeians were given full citizen rights, and marriages between the patricians and plebeians and were declared legal and valid. The plebeians were eligible to vote, gain political representation, get justice in court proceeding, and obtain freedom from debt. In 367 BC, a law was passed, the Licinian, Sextian law, that one of the two consuls should be a plebeian. However, the patricians were the only ones to hold high office or religious posts, sit in the Senate, and the custom was still preserved in the patrician order. A list of other public offices were gradually opened to the plebs in 356 BC, the dictatorship, an unusual body of magistrates, the mandatory officials of which was appointed in times of great danger, the censorship in 350 BC, the praetorship in 337 BC, and the pontifical college, the chief body of priests in ancient Rome, and the augur, one of a body of ancient Roman officials charged with observing and interpreting omens for guidance in public affairs. It could be a soothsayer or a prophet. In 300 BC, the plebeians had obtained the right to hold any office. The political organization was expanded to include tribunes, quaestors, aediles, censors, and praetors. These political changes gave rise to a new aristocracy, composed of patrician and wealthy plebeian families. Moreover, admission to the Senate became almost the traditional privilege of these families, but the position of the poorer plebeian families was not improved. The very poor had no relief, and a marked distinction became two classes of peoples, the rich, and the poor. Later these two classes led to more struggles in the later republic between the aristocratic party and the popular party. The rise of these new nobilities ended the struggles between the two orders, accomplishments by the plebs of political equality, and the establishment of a new autocracy of nobles made up of ruling families of both classes. Thank you for listening. If this video has been a blessing to you, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.